the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
Abusuafo enne sese ameno ekasei happening live ewo Greater Accra ana sese NPP members of parliament together with the former finance minister Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam ana sese ameno kasei de omode press conference sese atu edwa na press conference na omoye no the true state of the nation's address ana NPP donkuma no na omoye hu say John Dramani Mahama the last Thursday 27 February 2025 I will be ready SONA State of the Nation's address parliament no omoye hu say na propaganda bi entro bi ana chese omampanyini ebetware kire oman no wa meka the true state of the nation no ankyere oman no na enne sisi am no ka say the Greater Accra NPP amanyoku no the agu form kire say no oman no te and handing over at the NDC amanyoku no was 7th January 2025 now so omampanyini no in his state of the nation's address no wan kanokre no ankyere and even with regards to the country's economy no or can pife say Nana Adodan Kwakufa Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia criminally mismanaging the country's economy and the country is in a severe hardship will be a suffer now in fact Honorable Mohammed Amin Adam any NPP members of parliament will say yes no crime or John Dramani Mahama anka and then who be a energy sector economy na ekokwohwe sectors ahodo na mampanyin bo boss the education sectors just say one timi anka bi papa bi anfa ho no enne NPP amanyoko no amiye hu say the oman no esite we just say NDC amanyoko no de no credit de amone no bonsan ho amotwam kura just say omontimi emeka no credit akropempo emfa nkere oman Ghana for yenye bre ni entie state of the nation's address omo afa no true state of the nation's address NPP amanyoko no nsisiye no yenkotie bi
months of import cover. The NDC left office in 2016 with gross international reserves of $6.2 billion or 3.5 months of import cover. Again, 4 months of import cover versus 3.5 months of import cover. Who is better managing the economy of Ghana? Ladies and gentlemen, the true state of our nation is that economic growth has rebounded strongly. The external sector is impressive, and our resilience towards shocks and external vulnerabilities is at all-time high. This is the true state of our economy, but the president and his government has a different understanding of what a strong economy means. President Mahama again cited the headline inflation of 23.8% and the 19% rate of depreciation of the cedi for 2024 as indicators of a badly managed economy. It's important to provide context to this. Following the COVID-19 and supply shocks globally, prices of food and other essentials increased substantially. Even in the advanced countries, inflation averaged 7%, very high for countries that are used to 1% or less inflation. The causes of this rise in inflation globally were not far-fetched. For example, COVID-19 slowed down the world economy due to lockdowns and the closure of factories and offices, including major port facilities across the world. And this adversely impacted global supply chains. Also, many countries implemented fiscal stimulus to revive economic activity. However, faced with supply constraints, the increased demand resulting from the fiscal stimulus led to higher inflation. To control inflation, the central banks of many countries, led by the advanced economies, resorted to monetary tightening by increasing rates. This led to significant investment reversals from small open economies like Ghana, weakening our currency and fueling the rise in inflation. This, together with imported inflation, pushed Ghana's inflation sharply to 54% by the end of 2022. The current rate of 23% therefore means that inflation was halved within a year, and we were working to bring it further down to the pre-COVID level of 8 plus or minus 2% by 2026. Whilst 23% is still high, the effort to bring it down from 54% has been significant. It must be noted that before COVID-19 struck the world, the NPP demonstrated a record in inflation management. We brought inflation down from 15.4% in 2016, handed over to us by President Mahama, to 11.8% in 2017, 9.4% in 2018, 7.9% in 2019. Inflation for 2 successive years remained a single digit, the largest period in our recent economic history. The effect of the pandemic began to be felt from 2020, when inflation rose to 10.4% in 2020, 12.6% in 2021, and then to 54% at the peak of the global economic crisis in 2022. Even laymen can understand this. How the current managers of the economy cannot understand this can only be born out of political dishonesty. The adverse circumstances the NPP administration faced were unprecedented, but such did not exist when President Mahama's government achieved headline inflation of 15.4% above the target of 10.1% in 2016. We know that there is an inverse relationship between inflation and the strength of a currency. A higher depreciation of the currency will automatically pass through to inflation in developing economies like Ghana. This means that inflation will also be higher, and the reverse also holds. Therefore, following the sharp depreciation of the cedi in 2022 by 50%, inflation was also going to rise sharply. This strong pass-through would naturally be a major challenge for the managers of the economy. By reducing the rate of depreciation to 19% in 2024, we have seen the mooting of the pass-through to inflation, and these efforts cannot be glossed over. These efforts by the previous administration and the favorable results produced should be appreciated by President Mahama and improved for even better outcomes for our people. These effective efforts should not be disregarded and belittled for political reasons. As a country, we gain nothing by this kind of politics. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the rate of 6.5% depreciation we have witnessed year to date in 2025 is not informed by any sustainable strategies by the current government. The current disparity between inflation and the rate of depreciation is evidence of heavy central bank intervention on the market. The Mahama administration and the central bank can do this, but this is happening only because the previous administration left a gross international reserve of $8.9 billion by the end of 2024. This is being used to shore up the value of the cedi. The president deliberately, as you know, avoided this in his statement. Fellow Ghanaians, the true state of the nation is that exchange rate stability, which we saw before the end of 2024 and which has continued into the first quarter of this year, is not by any magic from the Mahama government. It is because the Akufo-Addo government left significant levels of international reserves for them. In addressing the issue of buffers created to support expenditure and maturing debt obligations, the president focused on the sinking fund as if it is the only source of buffers. The sinking fund is just one of our buffers. At each point in time, the government designates some accounts for buffer and for purposes of special payments. In the last 8 years, such accounts included the sinking fund, the Eurobond proceeds account, the IMF proceeds account, and the Treasury Main 2 account. For example, the IMF third review disbursement of $360 million was done on 2nd December 2024, but this was kept as buffer, part of which was used to pay coupons amounting to $346 million to Eurobond holders on 3rd January 2025. This was not done from the sinking fund. Similarly, in October 2024, we paid $520 million to our Eurobond holders for the first coupons and other fees. But again, this was not done from the sinking fund. How could we have done these payments if we didn't have buffers? Yet the president thinks that the only buffers we have is the sinking fund. The NPP also left significant amount of buffers, more than 5 billion Ghana cedis from the 2024 revenue collected by GRA in the Treasury main 2 accounts, which the new government has used. Yet the president failed to talk about it and focus only on the sinking fund. On the financial sector, ladies and gentlemen, the president again played to the gallery by stating that, and I quote, "The financial sector continues to struggle despite the previous government reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector clean-up exercise to date." Reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis. NDC's usual sweeping statements. He made this on the financial sector, ladies and gentlemen, the president again played to the gallery by stating that, and I quote, "The financial sector continues to struggle despite the previous government reportedly spending 29.9 billion Ghana cedis on the financial sector cleanup exercise to date," unquote. Typical of NDC's usual sweeping statements, he made this conclusion without providing any basis. Whilst we sympathize with those who were adversely affected by the financial sector cleanup, the exercise was well intended to protect the banking industry from collapse, protect depositors' money, and revive the economy. The evidence today shows that, notwithstanding the DDEP effects on the local banks, the financial sector has become stronger, with banks posting impressive financial ratios and returning to profitability. This is the true state of the financial sector in Ghana. The Bank of Ghana's recent publication, Summary of Economic and Financial Data, January 2025, provides very rich information about the performance of the financial sector. The annual growth in total assets of the financial sector, as at the end of 2024, was 33.8%, and total deposits by 28.8%. Similarly, in terms of liquidity, core liquid assets to short-term liabilities grew by 46.3%. The capital market shows similar strong performance, with the GSE All-Share Index year-to-date growing by 56.2% by December 2024. The earnings and profitability ratios also show that return on asset before tax recorded an annual growth of 5.4% in December 2023 and 5% in December 2024, whilst return on equity after tax grew at 34.2% in December 2023 and 30.8% in December 2024. It is no secret that the strength of an economy is also determined by the strength of its financial sector. Given the record of performance of our financial sector under the NPP administration, is this correct, ladies and gentlemen, for such an economy to be described as badly managed? Ladies and gentlemen, you can now understand that all the main components of our economy are in good shape. The real sector, as demonstrated in real GDP growth, the external sector, showing impressive external positions through trade and current account surpluses, and the performance of the financial sector, posting impressive financial ratios. Therefore, we need to ask President Mahama, how did he come by the conclusion that the economy was mismanaged? Ladies and gentlemen, the president tried to scare the Ghanaian people about the country's debt service obligations for the next 4 years, which according to him will amount to 280 billion Ghana cedis, comprising 150 billion Ghana cedis for domestic and 130 billion Ghana cedis in external debt servicing. Government, at every time, provides for debt servicing obligations, and the president is aware of this. We expect the president to mobilize the funds and stop complaining, such as what every government in Ghana has done to service our debts. The MPP did that when he left us with debts in 2017. Our debt management strategy has ensured that Ghana's debt levels have decreased substantially, and so are our debt service, taking a significant burden off the government. We have ensured that through strong negotiations, the servicing of Ghana's debts owed to our official bilateral creditors, $5.4 billion, has been rescheduled until after 2026. The NDC government didn't negotiate this. The agreement we reached with the Official Creditors Committee for Ghana entails a rescheduling of all debt service, principal and interest, falling due between 20th December 2023 to 31st December 2026. As a result, no debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026. I want to repeat that. No debt service under bilateral debt will be paid until after 2026, including the debt we didn't pay in 2023, since we declared the debt standstill. This was negotiated by the MPP government, that we will not pay our debts to our official creditors until after 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, the rescheduled amounts to be paid are expected to be repaid in 16 years and in 17 years respectively after their contractual due date. We'll start servicing after 2026, but the amount we are rescheduling between 2023 and 2026, we won't pay them at all until after 16 and 17 years when their contractual due date have expired. This is the work the MPP government has done. Delays in payments will be compensated for by interest accruing on the amounts at concessional rates ranging between 1% and 3%. This offer applies to all our official bilateral creditors and ECA-backed facilities signed and disbursed before end 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, this provides briefing space for the new government. The MPP is not in government to benefit from this. It's briefing space, significant briefing space for the new government. Yet President Mahama will not talk about that. In addition, the debt service relief from this negotiation stands at $2.8 billion, which the government of Ghana would have paid, but which now stands as savings to the country. Again, President Mahama will not talk about this. Even with such a great work done by the MPP government, the president could not acknowledge it. Rather, he sought to take an earned credit for it when he stated in his address, and I quote, "We signed a memorandum of understanding with our official creditor committee to formalize the debt treatment agreed upon with official creditors. This marks a crucial step towards Ghana's restoration of long-term sustainability. The agreement would enable financial resources to support and strengthen economic recovery," unquote. I say to Mr. President, you did not sign any MOU. What Ghana needed to do to reach an agreement was to express consent to the terms of the MOU in writing. This was done on 12 January 2024 to reach an agreement in principle, later firmed up after further negotiations in June 2024, which paved way for the second successful review of the IMF program implementation. The OCC members, the participating creditor countries, 25 of them, were those required to sign up individually, which all of them did, except 3 countries that delayed because of their long internal processes. These countries finally signed up in January 2025, and that is why President Mahama wants to take credit for this. Mr. President, you played no role in this. Apart from the rescheduling of debt service and savings from the negotiations with our official bilateral creditors, we also achieved debt cancellation, outright debt cancellation of almost $4 billion United States dollars. and additional debt service relief of $4.7 billion United States dollars through our negotiations with Ghana's Eurobond holders. This has reduced our debt levels, our public debt levels, from 78% of GDP to 72% of GDP. In fact, from September to October 2024 alone, our debt levels reduced by 68 billion Ghana cedis. It is instructive to note, therefore, that with a total public debt level of 721 billion Ghana cedis, which President Mahama was talking about, which is 72% of GDP, our record on debt sustainability is better compared with President Mahama's debt to GDP ratio of 73.1% by the end of 2016 when he left office. This, therefore, does not give the President a good standing to teach us lessons on debts. The energy sector debt at the beginning of 2017 stood at $2.5 billion. According to the Ghana Energy Sector Recovery Program, the energy sector was badly managed by President Mahama to the extent that the debts could reach $12 billion in 5 years if nothing was done about it. President Akufo-Addo ensured that this did not happen, and we ended our administration with $2.4 billion debts in the energy sector, less than the $2.5 billion we inherited from President Mahama in 2016, and notwithstanding the fact that President Akufo-Addo kept the lights on. The MPP administration kept the lights on by spending $6.2 billion in the process over 7 years, with 2024 expenditure on energy alone standing at $1.4 billion. It is important to state also that the bulk of the ECG debts the President referenced in his address came from excess capacity payments because of take-or-pay energy contracts signed by President Mahama. These payments could not be reflected in electricity tariffs because PURC allows for only the cost of energy consumed to be in tariffs and not the cost of contracted energy. This is what resulted in the debts. And so we ask, as we often do, now who caused some? President Mahama should have been the last to come talking about energy sector debts when the bulk of the debts were caused by deals that he signed in his previous administration. Even with these debts from President Mahama's energy deals, Nana Akufo-Addo kept the lights on. We expect the President to do the same. Keep the lights on, Mr. President. The President refers to some 55 stalled projects funded from external resources because of non-disbursement of $2.9 billion, pales in the shadow of the savings we have made for Ghana, which he's going to be a beneficiary of anyway. The consequent savings Ghana is making through the rescheduling of the debt service in respect of this project shows that our debt management strategy was masterstroke. The reason the President must applaud us rather than doing politics with it. We wish to state, without any equivocation, that unlike the NDC, the MPP administration borrowed to develop our country. By the end of our administration, we increased the size of GDP by $20 billion.